Welcome to York.
Thank you for coming here today. I've been coming to Remembrance Day ceremonies since I was a very small boy. I went to Remembrance Day ceremonies as a cub, as a scout, and as a cadet. And I've been coming to Remembrance Day ceremonies as an adult for many years. I used to go to them in Leeds when I was in the BNP. And I've seen Remembrance Day ceremonies change in the same way that I've seen Britain change. When I was a young lad, Remembrance Day was about recognising the sacrifice that mostly young men made fighting to keep Britain British, fighting for Britain. But as I've grown older and as I've come to these ceremonies, I've increasingly seen people stand up and change that narrative. No longer were young men going to war to save this country. No longer were young men going to war to stop people invading this country or to keep this country British. But young men apparently went to war to fight fascism, to fight for a multicultural, inclusive, diverse nation, a nation under a rainbow flag, a nation full of gay pride parades and the right to transition your child, but a nation that doesn't have the right for its own people to speak their minds, a nation where when normal people say, I've had enough of all this kind of thing, they go to jail. Apparently we fought fascism so people could be jailed for speaking their mind, so that people who stood up and said, well, actually, didn't these young men fight to stop their country being invaded? Well, we're being invaded now. Well, you go to jail for saying that. What freedoms were actually won fighting 2 world wars? And I've been saying this for many years, and this was something that I was booed and hissed at for saying. Mark Collett was the bad guy for saying, what did they fight for? Was it really worth it? Should we really have gone to war with Germany? Was a brothers' war that left over 400,000 young men dead fighting European nationalists really a worthy cause? And I was the pariah for saying that. But the other day on Good Morning Britain, a 100-year-old veteran sat on a couch on national television, and when they said, how do you feel about the Second World War? He said, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the sacrifice of over 400,000 young men, because the Britain we have today wasn't worth fighting for. And that wasn't Mark Collett, that wasn't the BNP, that wasn't Patriotic Alternative. That was a veteran. That was one of the few survivors who were left from that war. He looks at a country that he's not proud of, that he doesn't recognise, that he doesn't feel at home in, and he realises that watching his friends dying wasn't worth it. And it really wasn't. Because you look at what we've been left with today, you look at the outcome of that war, and you can say, we're second-class citizens in our own homeland, but that's not really true, because we're worse off than that. There is an ethnic and racial hierarchy in this country that was created at the end of the Second World War and has become increasingly prevalent as we head towards being a minority. And that racial and ethnic hierarchy doesn't place us in second place. Second place is preferential to where we are. We're at the bottom of that totem pole. The sons, the daughters, the grandsons, the great-granddaughters of those men who bravely went to fight, they now don't have a place in this country. And you look back at that second great brothers' war with great sadness. And I'm still proud of those men who went and fought, and I'm still desperately sad for those who never came back and their families. But I acknowledge the bloodshed has done nothing for European people. Young white Britons fighting young white Germans didn't save this country. It helped condemn it to a nightmare state where hundreds of thousands of white girls have been raped by invaders. Not by German invaders, not by Italian invaders, but by people the vast majority of this country never wanted here. But our traitorous politicians invited them in against our wishes, and let them do what they wanted to us. Just the other day we saw another one of these spree crimes where a man that they call a British national storms down a train stabbing 11 people just hours after going into a barber shop and threatening everyone with a knife, but the police couldn't be bothered to go out because no one wants to attend a crime scene like that, because those kind of crime statistics, they don't look good on the front page of a paper. The government don't think they look good in a report because it paints a picture. It paints a picture of a nightmare that was founded in the fires of 1945, and a nightmare we're now being left to live with. And yes, I do honour our war dead. I honour all the young white men who died in the Second World War fighting for what they thought was best. But I also acknowledge the truth. Entering into that war was truly a death knell, not just for Britain, but for the whole of Europe. And now it falls on us to fight the real invasion, a genuine invasion, because the Germans didn't really want to invade Britain, but there are millions of people coming to Britain every year that do want to take this land from us, and the politicians want to give it to them. And it now falls on us to fight a new battle, a battle to truly save this country. And that battle truly does honour the memory of those who died in the Second World War, because they were fighting for the same thing as what we're fighting for. They fought because they wanted white Britons to remain in charge of Britain. They wanted a British Britain. They didn't want a German Britain, but there was never a plan for this to be a German Britain. There is now a plan for this to be a Somali Britain, a Nigerian Britain, a Pakistani Britain, an Indian Britain. And it's our duty to honour their sacrifice by making sure that we, as white Britons, not only remain a majority in this country, but this country, for generations to come, is run by the descendants of those who in the 1940s stood up and gave so much. Thank you.